Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar. The time is now, What to Know About Alzheimer's. My name is Patricia Cole. I'm a Program Director for Career Transition Services here at the Military Officers Association of America. We are happy to partner with the Alzheimer's Association to offer this webinar about Alzheimer's disease. Our objective today is to provide education about the disease and information about available resources and support, whether you yourself are directly affected by the disease or you're caring for someone who is. You're going to hear an enlightening webinar today, and you can also find more information on this topic on the Alzheimer's Association's website and via some resources that we'll be providing you during the course of the webinar. A few housekeeping items before we get started. Along the bottom of your screen or device, you should see these icons. Clicking on each one of these icons will open a small window on your screen if the window is not already open. The first icon is the media player. That's just where you're going to see the speakers. It's where you should be seeing me right now. The second icon, the one with the little dialog box with the tiny little question mark in it, this is where you're going to be able to ask questions, and you will have an opportunity to ask questions at the end. The blue icon of the screen is where you can see the very few slides that we'll be using today. The icon with the person on it is where you'll be able to find the speaker biographies. The last icon with the paperclip is where you're going to see some information that we're going to be providing you today. It includes a link to supportive resources on the Alzheimer's Association website and where you can find a chapter near you. It includes a flyer for the Alzheimer's Association's 24/7 helpline, a brochure for the 10 warning signs, and a link to Trial Match, where you can search for appropriate clinical trials in which you may be eligible to participate. We're going to be talking about all of these things in greater depth. We are recording this webinar. When the webinar is complete, you're going to receive an email that contains a link to the recording. So please keep that in mind, and don't be distressed if you feel like you may have missed something. You're going to have ample opportunity to watch all of this again when you receive that link. A couple of quick words about the Military Officers Association of America, MOA, who we are and what it is that we do. MOA is a veteran-focused nonprofit association that advocates for military pay and benefits. We represent all 7 of the uniformed services, and the work we do supports the currently serving active duty, veterans of any length of service, National Guard, reservists, and of course, our great military families. MOA also believes that protecting the health, financial security, and quality of life of those who are serving and who have served, and their families and survivors, is the foundation of a strong national defense. To that end, we have established 2 charitable subsidiaries to help military and veteran families enjoy a quality of life they've earned through their service. Please visit our website to learn more about the wonderful work our charities are doing and consider donating. It's just one more way each of us can emulate the MOA motto to never stop serving. And now let's begin. Here's today's agenda. We are going to kick things off with a presentation by Katie Greenawalt on the 12 warning signs of Alzheimer's. When Katie finishes her presentation, we're going to transition to a panel discussion with 3 veterans who are going to share the information they have on today's topic. And then at the end, we're going to open it up for a Q&A session so that we can get your questions. So please be thinking about your questions as we go through the webinar. In the event that you don't have an opportunity to ask your question, we're also going to be sharing a resource that will allow you to still be able to get your questions answered. But we're going to get to as many questions as we can today. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Katie Greenawalt. Katie is a community educator for the Alzheimer's Association. Welcome, Katie, and we are looking forward to hearing your presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Patricia. I'm going to share my presentation now so everyone should be able to see. All right. Patricia, are you seeing the screen now?
We need to remind everybody to go to the media player, I believe, don't we?
All right, if I can just get some confirmation that everyone can see my 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's slides, I will start the presentation.
Hi, wonderful, Katie. It looks like we're good to go.
We're good to go. Awesome. All right, so I am so happy to be here today to talk about the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's disease. And today we're going to explore the most common warning signs of Alzheimer's to help you be informed about what is normal aging and what is not. By the end of today's program, the goal is for you to be able to do these few things: describe typical age-related memory, thinking, and behavior changes, recognize common warning signs of Alzheimer's disease and dementia, discuss the tips for approaching someone about memory concerns, explain the importance of early detection and benefits of diagnosis, identify possible tests and assessments for the diagnostic process, and then finally name the resources available through the Alzheimer's Association. All right, so let's move on. You may have heard the terms dementia and Alzheimer's used interchangeably. Now, while they are related, there are significant differences between the two. And first, let's discuss what dementia is. Dementia is the umbrella term for an individual's changes in thinking, memory, and reasoning. There are many possible causes of dementia, and Alzheimer's is the most common cause. Other common causes of dementia are vascular dementia, which is marked by changes in the blood flow and blood vessels in the brain. Dementia with Lewy bodies is identified by specific brain changes throughout the brain that include the buildup of a protein known as alpha-synuclein. And then there's frontotemporal dementia, which is marked by brain cell loss in the front sections of the brain, or our frontal lobes. Each types of these dementia may have distinct characteristics to cause specific behaviors in individuals, but there's also some overlap in behaviors among the types of dementia. Now, Alzheimer's is the most common form of dementia, and it accounts for more than 80% of all cases. So let's talk a little bit about what Alzheimer's disease actually is. More than 100 years ago, Dr. Alice Alzheimer described specific changes in the brain, what we call the formation of plaques and tangles. Now, Alzheimer's is a progressive brain disease that is marked by these key changes and is thought to impact memory, thinking, and behavior. Our brain has three main parts: the cerebrum, the cerebellum, and the brainstem. Now, each one of these plays a role in how our body functions. The cerebrum fills up most of your skull. It is the part of the brain most involved in remembering, problem solving, thinking, and even feeling. And there are about 100 billion nerve cells, or neurons, throughout our brains that transmit messages in order for us to create memories, thoughts, and feelings. Now, Alzheimer's disease causes these nerves to die, which leads to the brain tissue being lost, or what we call shrinkage in the brain. And this causes loss of function and communication between brain cells. Now, these changes can cause the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, such as memory loss, problems with thinking, and problems with planning, maybe some behavioral issues, and at the end stages, even problems with swallowing. So it's really important to know the warning signs of Alzheimer's so we can be on the lookout for these changes. And what we're going to talk about next is what those warning signs are to be on the lookout for. And you'll see 10 different blocks pop up on your screen. So the Alzheimer's Association, as a leader in this area, developed a list of 10 warning signs. And this list is intended to be a tool to help identify unusual changes in a person's memory, thinking, or behavior. But what I do want to note is that this list does not constitute a diagnosis of Alzheimer's or dementia. These are simply just the most common examples of changes experienced in individuals. You could experience one or more of these signs in different degrees, but let's explore each of them and what some typical age-related changes may be. So our first is memory loss that disrupts daily life. One of the most common signs of Alzheimer's, especially early on, is forgetting recently learned information. Others could include forgetting important dates or events, repeatedly asking the same questions, and increasingly relying on memory aids or learning or leaning on others for things or tasks that were once handled on their own. A typical age-related change, conversely, would be maybe sometimes forgetting information, but then remembering it later on. Our second warning sign is challenges in planning or solving problems. Some people may experience new difficulties in executive functioning, including developing or following a plan or difficulty concentrating. Now, on the other hand, a more typical age-related change is making occasional errors when managing bills or household finances. Our third warning sign, difficulty completing familiar tasks. People living with dementia often find it hard to complete daily tasks that used to be managed with ease. An example of this could be driving to a familiar place, writing a grocery list, or even remembering how to play your favorite game. And then on the other hand, a more typical age-related change would be occasionally needing help using a microwave or a remote or using some new technology. This could also include having, trouble that the person hasn't had the opportunity to engage with something as frequently. So that would be something more normal. It's going to be something that would not have been normal. Our fourth warning sign is going to be confusion with time or place. An individual living with Alzheimer's or another dementia may lose track of dates, seasons, or the passage of time. I think this is the warning sign that a lot of people think of when they hear about Alzheimer's. They may have trouble understanding something if it's not currently happening, or become confused about where they are or how they got there. Now, this can become more dramatic and profound in the middle and late stages of the disease. Now, a more typical age-related change could be getting confused about what day it is, or maybe when a scheduled appointment is, but then figuring it out later. That's the key here, is figuring out later is something that would be age-related. All right, number 5 is trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships. Some individuals with Alzheimer's may experience vision problems, which can lead to difficulty with balance, trouble reading, and problems judging distance and determining color and contrast. All of these can impact driving or just navigating the environment around us. Vision changes such as cataracts are going to be something that is a typical age-related change. So this sign right here shows us that changes aren't just about our memory. It's really important to think about all of the other ways that someone's daily life could be impacted by any of these changes. New problems with words and speaking or writing is our sixth warning sign. Individuals may have trouble following or joining a conversation. They could stop in the middle of a conversation and forget what they were talking about or continuously repeat themselves. They might also struggle with finding the right words or calling things by the wrong name. They may start using more descriptive terms to talk about something rather than just using the name of the actual item. Conversely, a more normal age-related change would be occasionally having trouble finding the right word. The seventh warning sign, misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace steps. And this is one that often causes concern in people. And I do want to clarify that this is not just about losing your keys on occasion, right? Misplacing things from time to time, but then being able to retrace your steps to find them is normal. It's a normal age-related change that happens to all of us. But a person with Alzheimer's disease may lose things and not be able to recall when it was last seen, or even identify the location where it was placed, or he or she may put things in unusual places. A funny example of this is putting shoes in the refrigerator. But, things like that happen when someone has Alzheimer's disease. Because of the lack of executive function and awareness, the person may grow increasingly suspicious of others, and they could start accusing other people of stealing and do so more frequently over time. All right, our eighth warning sign is going to be decreased or poor judgment. Individuals may experience changes in their judgment or decision-making skills, like using poor judgment when dealing with money, or even paying less attention to personal hygiene. This can be especially common in individuals who live alone. Now, making a bad decision once in a while, such as forgetting to get your oil changed, is a more typical age-related change for this sign. All right, number 9 is withdrawal from work or social activities. As we age, it's normal to feel uninterested by family or social engagements at times, right? This is normal. However, someone who's experiencing dementia-related changes may start to lose their ability to even hold or follow a conversation. And as a result, they may begin withdrawing from social encounters or hobbies that they once enjoyed. They could really just lose the confidence to engage in the ways that they used to do. So, sometimes feeling uninterested in family or social engagements would be a more normal age-related change. And finally, we have changes in mood and personality. Individuals with Alzheimer's or another dementia may become confused, suspicious, depressed, fearful, or even anxious. They might get easily upset either at home or when they're out of their comfort zone. As we age, of course, it's normal to develop very specific ways of doing things and become upset or irritable when our routine is disrupted, right? A lot of us don't like change, but someone with Alzheimer's or dementia may become fearful, angry, or easily frustrated, which is something that should be addressed. All right, our next topic is going to be early detection and why early detection is so important. And it's key that we pay attention to what's going on with our own cognitive health and not dismiss any changes that we may be experiencing as normal aging, as well as that of others around us. So in this module, we're going to discuss why it's critical to address any observed changes early and seek answers from a medical professional. All right, so people who have memory problems are often less aware of it than those around them. And we're not going to have time to play the expert video or talk about what Mary noticed, and we do have some awesome speakers later on who will talk about their experiences. But I do want to mention that sometimes the person who is exhibiting symptoms isn't aware or may not have the insight to know that they are experiencing these changes. And this is why having outside perspective is so incredibly important. especially important for individuals who might live alone or are far from family and friends. And if you continue to observe changes in someone, a loved one, a friend, it's critical that you plan to take the next step to have a conversation with the person or someone else close to him or her about the things that you're noticing. Now, this can be a difficult or really uncomfortable conversation to have. And the Alzheimer's Association has developed a little roadmap. It has 10 helpful steps to help make addressing these concerns less daunting and a little more productive. So let's take a look. And the first thing we're going to do is start by assessing the situation. So if I can find my clicker, here we go. So the first thing is, what changes in memory, thinking, or behavior do you see? What is the person doing or not doing that is causing concern? Next, we want to think about what else is going on. Various conditions can cause changes in memory, thinking, and behavior. Are there other health or lifestyle issues that could be contributing to these changes? Things like stress, a chronic disease like diabetes, or even a change in medication could all be contributing to this person's memory problems. All right, so the third is to learn about the signs and benefits of early diagnosis. Now, by joining us today, you've already taken the very important step to learn about all of these topics and to educate yourself. Think to yourself, do you notice any of these signs that I had just talked about in the person in your life that you're concerned about? The next thing to approach a memory concern is, has anyone else noticed the changes that you've observed? It's important to talk with family and friends. What, if any, changes have they noticed? Now, here is having a conversation. Who should be the one to discuss concerns with the person? Maybe it's you, maybe it's a trusted family member or a friend, or a combination. It's usually best to speak one-on-one so that person doesn't feel threatened or ambushed. But of course, use what you know about the person to judge what approach might work best. And think about when and where this conversation should be held. Okay, so it's important to have the conversation as soon as possible. And in addition to identifying a date and time, you could also consider where the person will feel the most comfortable. Maybe they'll feel more comfortable doing it from their home versus out in a public place. All right, number 6 is, I already went over that one, excuse me. Number 7, what will you or the person having the conversation say? You may want to build out somewhat of a script. Consider the following questions. Things like, I've noticed this change in you and I'm concerned. Have you noticed this? Or are you worried? How have you been feeling lately? You haven't seemed like yourself. I noticed you, maybe insert a specific example into that, and it worried me. Has anything else like that happened? Those are just some examples of how to start the conversation. Number 8, offer to go with the person to the doctor. Now, ask the person to see a doctor, and you could offer to accompany them. Try using encouraging words. You could say, there's lots of things that could be causing this. Let's see if the doctor can help us figure out what's going on. Or the sooner we know what's causing these problems, the sooner we can address it. Maybe you could even say, I think it would give us both peace of mind if we talk to a doctor. So just some, examples of ways you could phrase that. And then if needed, have multiple conversations. Don't be discouraged if your first conversation is not as successful as you'd hoped. You could write down notes about how it went so you can prepare for any future conversations. And remember, don't dismiss any changes that you've noticed simply because the person is reluctant to address them or the conversation didn't go as planned. And then reach out for support. you can turn to the Alzheimer's Association. Call our 24/7 helpline to talk with master's level clinicians who can provide reliable support and information, including how to have this important conversation. All right, and finally, see a doctor. Many people address concerns about memory, thinking, and behavior with their primary care physician first. However, in some cases, the primary care physician may refer you to a specialist for further evaluation. An example of a specialist could include a geriatrician who have additional training in medical care for diseases and conditions that affect older adults, usually over the age of 65. Neurologists who specialize in diseases of the brain and the nervous system. And then maybe a neuropsychologist. Here's all those listed on the slide for you. A neuropsychologist who can assess, diagnose, and treat psychological disorders associated with brain-based conditions. Psychiatrists who specialize in disorders that affect mood or the way the mind works. And then finally, just a psychologist who has just special training in testing memory and other functions. So now that we know what the signs to look for are and how to approach the conversation, let's discuss the benefits of early detection. Now, there are a number of benefits for early detection. For one thing, a person is able to have a voice in what happens next. They can make plans, they can live their life on their own terms. They can also plan for the future, maybe make financial plans or care plans. They can let people know what they want, which is a real gift later on. And it also allows time for families to make plans and to make decisions about who can do what and figure out care and those types of issues. Also, the treatments that are available, while they don't cure Alzheimer's, they can help with symptoms, and they do tend to work better in earlier stages of the disease, so the earlier the person is able to use them. All right, so here is just a recap of the different things we talked about. And I'm not going to talk about all of these just to save some time. But I do want to briefly discuss seeking a diagnosis and what is involved in the medical process to determine the cause of symptoms. Now, if you feel comfortable, you can also put in, I don't know if you have a chat button. I don't think you do, but normally I would have someone stick this in the chat to test their knowledge. So think to yourself, do you know if there's currently a way to diagnose Alzheimer's disease? So is this true or false? There is currently no way to diagnose Alzheimer's disease. What do you think? And the answer is false. So contrary to an outdated belief that an Alzheimer's diagnosis can only be made at autopsy, there are a number of assessments and tests that make it possible for healthcare professionals to diagnose Alzheimer's and dementia with a high degree of certainty. Now, determining the cause of dementia can sometimes be more difficult. And as you can see on this screen, here are some steps in the diagnostic process. So the assessment could include things like a medical history, physical exam, maybe a screening for depression, or an interview with close companions. And then lab tests could also be included, mental cognitive status tests, and also brain imaging tests. So it is possible to diagnose Alzheimer's disease. Now, do dementia-like symptoms always result in a diagnosis of Alzheimer's or another dementia? We're going to skip that part. And what's next when the diagnosis is Alzheimer's, right? So what do we do next? you can contact the Alzheimer's Association. And I'm going to put up on the screen now some available resources that you can use if you have any questions. Our 24/7 helpline, the number's on the screen. And also, always, you can go online at our website, alz.org. And if you wish to find your local chapter in your community, you can go to alz.org/CRF. And I'm going to just finish up. And so I want to thank you all for listening to my presentation. And we're going to do questions after our next panel of guests. So I just want to thank everyone for listening and look forward to answering any questions you may have. And I'm now going to hand it back over to Patricia to introduce our next speakers. Thank you.
Katie, wow. Thank you so much for that presentation of the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's. I feel like we're all better equipped to understand what we should be mindful of if we suspect there might be an issue, either in ourselves or in someone close to us, and the techniques you gave us about how to approach and handle that. I also found it very helpful to know, what signs are just a normal part of the aging process. So it was very helpful to have those examples. So thank you very much, Katie. Katie's going to stay right here with us and participate in the Q&A session at the end. So she'll be here to answer any questions that you may have then. Now, let's segue over to the panel discussion. And it is my pleasure to introduce the members of our panel. Les Berger, he's the care partner for his spouse of 61 years, Julie. Daryl Foss, an individual who is living with mild cognitive impairment, MCI. And finally, my colleague, Paul Frost, who will share his extensive knowledge regarding veteran support and resources. So thank you all for being here with us this afternoon. Les, we're going to start with you. Can you please tell us a bit about yourself and share your story with us?
Thank you, Patricia. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. It is really a pleasure for me to be here with you all today for this very important webinar. Just yesterday, a man, perhaps in his 50s, was at our house to do some work on my computer. While we were working and not paying attention to my wife, she wandered out of the house, and so we had to stop what we were doing and go out and find her. That led to this gentleman asking me several questions about dementia and Alzheimer's, and it was very clear that he knew nothing about the disease. And that's why I'm here today. That's why Julie would want me to be here today. My wife and I are both 81. She's been my soulmate since we were 16. And as Patricia pointed out, we celebrated our 61st wedding anniversary this past month. While I was in medical school and being rather poor, we thought it would be a great idea to join the Army. $360 a month for a second lieutenant seemed like an awful lot of money. Little did I know that I would serve for 33 years, that we would raise 3 wonderful sons, all of whom made a career in the military. And as a matter of fact, our oldest will return next week from his 3rd deployment to the Middle East. Julie worked and volunteered for the American Red Cross for over 50 years, serving all across the United States, in Puerto Rico, Guatemala, Panama, Europe, Korea, Japan. In 2015, She received the Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award for service at the White House from President Obama. She was loved by all she served, worked with, and mentored. And she was absolutely brilliant. Then in 2014, about the time we were both contemplating really retiring, she began experiencing some of the cognitive symptoms that Katie referred to. 2 years later, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, and she indeed had an imaging study done that demonstrated the abnormal plaques in the brain that are characteristic of Alzheimer's. Today, she's in the middle phase of this dread disease. She can no longer be left alone, and she needs help with pretty much all her activities. For the first few years, when Julie was in the early stage of the disease, she was a staunch advocate for educating the public, the government, even the medical profession, urging the government to increase funding for research, for clinical care, for education. We spent many hours and days walking the halls of our Congress in D.C., and when we were living in Washington State, in Olympia. So perhaps the first thing I would say to you all is a follow-on to the slides that we saw about the signs of cognitive impairment. Please don't ignore them. Don't be embarrassed to speak with your physician. There are easily administered screening tools that are available. And on a personal note, I've come to believe that a baseline screening test should be administered to all of us as we age. Really no different than getting an electrocardiogram. And should you become a caregiver, trust me when I say it will be the most difficult thing you will ever have to do. The disease is relentless. It robs you of the one you love. You will experience frustration and anger and guilt. It is physically and emotionally draining beyond comprehension, and at this point, without treatment. But there is hope, and you don't have to weather this alone. If only you will reach out. And you've heard of so many ways to do that. In our lives, family, friends, our community, our place of worship, support groups, which are incredibly helpful, the Alzheimer's Association, which has been incredibly helpful to Julie and me, and programs sponsored at the federal, state, and even the county level. Don't be embarrassed. Don't become isolated. Absolutely the worst thing that you could do. The first thing Julie would say to people she would meet was to tell them she had Alzheimer's. And then the conversation would begin. And there were always a lot of hugs. So please take this seriously. 1 in 10 of us over 65, 1 in 3 of us over 85 will develop symptoms of cognitive impairment. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Les. It is so deeply moving to see your strong commitment to Julie. And we tremendously appreciate your willingness to be here today and to share your journey, which is ongoing. So thank you. Daryl, again, welcome. Can you please tell us about yourself and share your story?
Thank you, Patricia. I'm Daryl Foss. I currently live in Eagan, Minnesota, and I'm 78 years old. I was a U.S. Army Vietnam combat veteran. I was a crew chief on a UH-1B Huey helicopter stationed at Tan Son Nhut Air Base, Saigon, Vietnam, from 1965 to 1966. I was a certified public accountant and as was an adjunct instructor at the University of St. Thomas in St. Paul, Minnesota. I spent a career in accounting. I loved the intellectual challenges, but also strived on the social interaction with clients. When I got diagnosed, I knew one area of my life might be closing, but was determined to maintain my connections with the world. Mary, my spouse, our daughter and friends noticed my memory issues far in advance of being diagnosed, probably as early as 2007. I had the following warning signs, asking for the same information repeatedly, confusion with questions when asked, taking longer to process conversations, looking for words when speaking, difficulty accomplishing this daily task, confusion in making reservations and appointments, how to cut my wife's hair. I needed help to build and do home repairs, which were unnatural for me in the past. The list goes on and on. I have been followed for memory issues at the Minneapolis Veterans Medical Center, VA, since 2008. On June 11th of 2015, I was diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment, MCI, Alzheimer's, at the Minneapolis VA. I have a very vivid recollection of a conversation that took place that day in the VA conference room with my wife, our daughter, the clinical nurse specialist, when she told me that I had mild cognitive impairment, MCI, Alzheimer's. It was devastating to me. The feeling of hopelessness and helplessness. What would the future bring? Going forward, what would I be able to do? What would I not be able to do? How long would I remain independent? Will I be able to continue to do my annual canoe trips? And of course, I was in denial. The clinical nurse specialist made a number of suggestions of what we should do going forward. She recommended that we should stay socially and physically active and eat a healthy diet. She registered Mary and me for living with dementia at the Minneapolis VA. She suggested that we register for the habit program, Healthy Actions to Benefit Independence and Thinking. The clinical nurse specialist also suggested that we contact the Alzheimer's Association for additional information. Within a couple days of the diagnosis, Mary and I sat down to develop a purpose plan of what we would do going forward with this disease. The top three purposes for us were to learn as much as we could about the disease, advocate for the disease, and volunteer for research projects. Most of the time, I'm highly functional. Although when I'm tired, it is more apparent of my memory loss. I'm on donepezil, Aricept, which Mary and I feel has greatly improved my memory. My toolbox for living well with the disease includes having an annual driving test at the Minneapolis VA. Mary does a majority of the driving. Mary and I use an app that uses the GPS of the cell phone and let Mary and my daughter, who lives in Baltimore, know where I am at all times. For my medications, I use an app to remind me to take my medications. We also use an electronic calendar for our schedules. This enables me to see what has occurred on a particular date and time. It also jogs my memory of past and future events. One important part of my toolbox is my support partner, Mary. Support partners often bear the financial, physical, and emotional toll of this disease. I would suggest your caregiver support person enroll in a caregiving support group. The Alzheimer's Association, again, 1-800-272-3900, provides support, education, training, and other resources to increase the knowledge and to support those facing Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. My suggestion for living well with the disease is to make an effort to stay well connected with family and friends who can offer non-judgmental emotional support. We need to educate family and friends about the disease. We need to engage with other human beings. Continue doing activities you are familiar with and find some new activities to enjoy. Be creative. Make adjustments as necessary. Keeping socially active, eating a healthy diet, exercising, and getting plenty of sleep are aiding me in living well with this disease. There definitely is a life after the diagnosis. The Alzheimer's Association and the Veterans Administration gives me great hope that together we will defeat this disease. I am confident that one day there will be an Alzheimer's survivor. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to tell my story.
Daryl, thank you. As a Vietnam veteran, there is much to admire about you, but I find your courage inspiring because you have made the conscious decision to become a national early stage advisor with the Alzheimer's Association so that you can share your experiences, even while you are in the midst of living with this disease. So we recognize and appreciate your desire to do that and to sacrifice to help others. So thank you very much. Paul, what can you tell us about available resources for veterans and their families?
Thanks, Pat. And again, I'd like to echo thanks to Daryl and Les for sharing your stories. They're very inspiring. Unfortunately, there is not a lot of great resources from TRICARE or Medicare. So that's why what the Alzheimer's Association is doing and what the program that Daryl mentioned from the VA are very important to this effort. So Les mentioned federal, state, and county programs, and what he was talking about was the Area Agency on Aging. That's the name of the federal program. It's administered in each state and then subsumed by counties, and it may be multiple counties have one location that serves multiple counties. So that, again, is the Area Agency on Aging. If you Google that for your state's Area Agency on Aging, it will take you to your state's program, and you can drill down into your local program. And it doesn't necessarily have programs that will support your needs, but you don't know until you reach out to them. And again, the Alzheimer's Association, I know, has a relationship with them. So through the Alzheimer's Association, you may be able to find some information about your local Area Agency on Aging. The other program that Daryl mentioned is the VA's program. There's another program that would help your caregiver. So I'm not sure, Daryl, if your spouse is registered as a caregiver with the VA, but that is a program that will lend support to her and provide her with some benefits, as a veteran caregiver. So that is about it, unfortunately, on the programs that are available to us or to those who are suffering and living with the disease. But we encourage you to reach out to those programs for assistance. Thanks. Back over to you, Pat.
Thank you, Paul. That was informative. It's important for us to know what does exist so that we can leverage all of the support and resources that we possibly can. So thank you. And now it is time for questions. And I see a number of you have been populating the question box, so thank you for that. But I want to take the opportunity to ask the very first question because it's a very important question, but it's one that I don't expect the audience to ask. Les and Daryl, this question is for each of you. Have you participated in clinical trials? And if so, what was your impetus for doing so? And what was your experience like? We can start with you, Les.
Thank you, Patricia. Yes, we have. Julie was in 2 clinical trials, one lasting about 2.5 years and one lasted several months and ended because we moved out of state. Julie was from the very beginning motivated to participate as much for the public good as for her own benefit. It was just another way of her giving back. It was something that she just very, very much wanted to do. It did result actually in she was receiving a monthly infusion and all kinds of follow-up tests and scans and the attention of specialists. And so there was clearly that benefit. But for her, it was the public good. In fact, since we've been living here in Virginia 2 months now, she's been after me about finding another clinical trial.
Wow, that's spectacular. Daryl, how about you?
I've actually been in 4 clinical trials. One of them with the VA, which was a non-invasive antioxidant quantification in the human brain under oxidative stress. That was a mouthful, right? Which was basically looking for some things down at the molecular level within the brain. It involved me getting some very deep MRI scans. The habit program, when I went through it, was actually a research project at the Mayo Clinic. When I went through it, it is now rolled out into the clinics at Mayo Clinic. It was a program giving me a lot of memory aids, a lot of information about the disease, a habit calendar, which I've sort of converted over to my electronic calendar. And again, a month at a glance. And again, I do need to have memory aids to help me live daily life. I also participated in the IDEAS study, which was a part of the Imaging Dementia, Evidence of Amyloid Scanning, which was funded in part by the Alzheimer's Association. I'm also in a Mayo Clinic long-term observational study, which is, again, I go down to Mayo Clinic once a year. It's been postponed now because of COVID, but where I have, again, blood tests, PET scans, and what have you, just looking at the long-term impact on Alzheimer's and malcognitive impairment.
Yeah.
The ACT program, which was also a study by the University of Minnesota School of Nursing, which was exercise and also then cognitive testing to see if exercise has an effect on that. I think the biggest benefit for being in research and clinical trials is you get a really good individual attention from kind of the top physicians and healthcare providers in the field. Again, it's a part of a kind of empowerment to participate, to actively engage in the treatment and the prevention process. You can gain access to potential treatments before they are widely available. And again, I think it's just a matter of paying forward, which Les mentioned. Every clinical trial, even if they aren't successful, contributes valuable knowledge to the study of Alzheimer's and memory issues.
Thank you very much, Daryl. I applaud both you and Les in your participation with these clinical trials. And for the audience's benefit, clinical trials are so critical because they are the primary way that researchers determine if a new treatment or a new drug is safe and effective. So you heard about the obvious benefits both to the individual and to the community at large. So if you have the opportunity to participate in clinical trials, I would strongly encourage it. Okay, so now we're finally able to take some of these wonderful questions that I've been seeing pop up. Again, use the question dialog box to submit your questions, and we will try to get to as many of them as possible. So let's go ahead and start.
First one is from Suzanne Walker, and I think it's Katie's. This is for Katie. Could hoarding be due to Alzheimer's disease?
Great question. So what I would say to this is it's not necessarily clear what causes hoarding disorder. There's a bunch of different things that could go into it: genetics, brain functioning, stressful life events, many different things. So there's not really a definite answer. So possibly, but no one can really be sure what the cause would be. And honestly, I would say it's more probably due to a stressful life event or genetics than anything.
Carolyn asks, is dementia that's the result of advanced diabetes treated the same way as Alzheimer's?
So that's a great question as well. Diabetes can cause several complications like damage to your blood vessels. And diabetes is considered a risk factor for one of the types of dementia that I talked about in the presentation, vascular dementia. So that's the type of dementia that occurs due to brain damage that's often caused by reduced or blocked blood flow to our brains. So the question is, what is the treatment the same? So the treatments are going to vary based on the individual and what specific diagnosis that they are given by their doctor. But really, what I would say is to this one, individuals should really work with your physician if this is something that you're dealing with to develop that best treatment plan, because every individual is different. And only your doctor can really give you the answer for that one, not someone like me.
Thank you, Katie. Therese asked if, and I believe it was Daryl, if you could please describe the HABIT program more in creating your care management plan. And is the HABIT program only available through the Mayo Clinic?
Yes, I believe it is only available through the Mayo Clinic. It is available, I think, in their clinics in Arizona and also in Florida, and also, of course, in Minnesota. We just found it to be very helpful because, again, they went into all the nuts and bolts of kind of the progression of the disease, and we did a lot of work with the calendar, a lot of work with just the, what to expect, I guess. And again, it was a 10-day, all-day sessions for like 2 weeks, 5 days a week for 2 weeks. So it was very comprehensive, and really, I think we got an awful lot out of the presentation that they gave to us.
Thank you, Daryl. Raymond asked if any of the over-the-counter memory improvement supplements, are any of them effective?
Another great question. So what I would say to this one is really I wouldn't buy into some of the claims that those supplements provide. A lot of them make some promises and claims that are really not regulated by the FDA. That's the main issue with those over-the-counter supplements is lack of regulation. So the FDA doesn't oversee product testing or ingredient accuracy. So what I would say is, make that personal decision with you and your doctor if you're going to take supplements. But we do know that there are no proven studies that have shown their effectiveness. So that would be my answer to that.
Well, that was an excellent question. Next from Devion, thank you. He appreciates the panel and the panel sharing the stories. His mother is dealing with the disease in a nursing home. And so here's a question for Katie. What is the Alzheimer's Association's stance or thoughts on the new Alzheimer's drug, aducanumab?
Yep. So that one has been in the news lately. And from everything I've heard from the Alzheimer's Association is that they're really welcoming and celebrating this approval from the FDA of this drug for the treatment of Alzheimer's disease. While certainly it's not a cure, it is the first ever FDA approved treatment for those underlying biological causes of Alzheimer's, not just the symptoms. Slowing progression for those with mild cognitive impairment because of Alzheimer's disease or Alzheimer's dementia in its earliest stage does offer the potential for more, time for diagnosed individuals with their loved ones. So I think that, the Alzheimer's Association is really excited and celebrating this accomplishment.
Given the growing prevalence of Alzheimer's disease, this is something that we should all be celebrating and, working to contribute more to research. Thank you very much, Katie. Rosemary has a very, very good question. And she wanted to ask if there are any recommendations for how to address these different issues. And I assume it's like among the 10 warning signs of a child with a parent who's giving care to her other parent who is in the more advanced stages of Alzheimer's disease. She wants to know, how can she help reduce fears that any admission of reduced ability to cope will result in unwanted interference? And I think any of our panelists and speakers would probably be in a position to talk to this, because that's what we're all afraid of, right? That if we admit to any kind of diminishment in our capacities, then suddenly people are going to be doing all kinds of things to us that we don't want them to do. So any recommendations or ideas of how we can kind of minimize that fear in ourselves and in others?
I'm not, this is Les. I'm not sure I really understand the question, but Julie and our experience has been really quite the opposite of that. Now, I mean, we're both retired, but our friends and community reaching out to help has just been extraordinary, and so I would certainly not. I would certainly not want us to ignore the symptoms or whatever, as opposed to seeking help.
Les, could I just interject? I think the questioner would like to know, how did your three sons play into the disease once Julie was diagnosed?
I'm sorry, say that again. What was the?
I think the questioner was kind of as a daughter or as a son, was kind of wondering how your three sons handled and interacted with you and Julie when Julie was diagnosed.
Well, you can speak up.
Okay, thank you for that. Again, our children, our grandchildren, our daughters-in-law absolutely reached out to provide whatever help they could. As a matter of fact, not too long ago, one of our granddaughters made the comment to her parents that they were being helicopter parents, a term that I had not heard before, that they were kind of hovering a lot. And that might be something I would add as well. One of the challenges as a caregiver has really been having the right balance between safety and independence. Certainly early on in the disease, Julie was capable of doing a lot of things, but yet there still were lapses. So how to allow that by still providing an appropriate safety net? She accused me of hovering quite a bit early on as well.
Our daughter has been really involved with the whole diagnosis and everything with the memory loss. In fact, she was one of the first ones who probably noticed it far in advance of even being diagnosed. So she's been an active, we only have the one daughter, but she's been actively involved in all the decision making and everything else. I mean, on occasion, I would have to say that my wife does do a little bit of hovering over me also that sometimes I don't totally appreciate. But again, she's just looking out for my best interests. I don't drive much anymore. I still have my driver's license. It was hard for me to give up driving. I loved to drive when I did drive. When I used to do canoe trips with my friend, I was usually the one that did all the driving. So that was a big one for me. I think it's just a matter of being open with people. We have not lost friends because I have been diagnosed with it. And I think, again, it's being open with them and trying to be honest with them and trying to educate them more on the disease than in everything else. But it is certainly something to be aware of. The ones I really feel sorry for are people who don't have a really good support group of spouses or family members who can step up, especially single people. I think that's something that needs to be addressed.
Well, Daryl, that kind of ties into a follow-on excellent question that Rosemary has also asked. And she's asking, what's our best advice and help for caregivers who insist that they are okay, but you can see that they are becoming weary and worn down? She says that it's difficult with the paranoia that's being exhibited to get help actually inside the home. Does anyone have any recommendations for this? She said it's difficult to watch her 83-year-old father-in-law care for his wife, and she and other members of the family want to help, but it's difficult when the caregiver is insisting that they are, that they are fine. Any ideas for strategies?
Well, I think it's personally, I think it's just a matter of getting the care partner out, whether it's a support group or even somebody come by to spend the afternoon to give them time to kind of regenerate themselves. And again, it's going to vary from people. Every person who has the disease may have a different, of having strangers come in, or even other family members and spending time. So it's sort of on a case by case. Again, I'm pretty independent yet, so it's not uncommon for Mary to go out and have lunch with her friends or whatever, because I can be left alone. Hard to tell what I might do when she's gone, but I can be left alone. I'm sort of like the kid in the movie, Home Alone. But that would be my best advice.
Yeah.
Maybe Les has more insight into that than I would.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure I do, but that really is an excellent question. One of the things that I've found is that that seems to work with Julie and perhaps works with me as well. I've asked a couple of very close friends to kind of take charge of that, and they don't hesitate, to get in my face when it's appropriate to do so. But sometimes, Rosemary, sometimes it might come better not from a family member, but from someone else. I have found sometimes that certainly with Julie that works sometimes. There are things that she won't accept from me as a husband that she certainly accepts from other people. I'm sorry I can't be more helpful than that.
Les, when you say other people, do you mean like medical professionals or just other friends within your circle?
Primarily friends, Patricia. I experienced that myself. My children, tend to hover and whatever, and I have to tell them to back away a little bit. But you know what? When my friend says something to me, I tend to hear it better sometimes.
Thank you. And I want to emphasize again something that Katie said, the importance of caregiving support groups. This is something that they're going to be very familiar with, and I would imagine is the best place to get some strategies. So even getting to a single meeting, I think, can help change the dynamic of what's going on and get the maximum amount of support and resources for those caregivers who are such an under-recognized population in this country. Robert asked if mild cognitive impairment, MCI, can it be reversed with the MIND diet or some other things? I think I know the answer to that, but I'll let Katie tackle it.
Yeah, so I am personally, my full-time job is a health educator with Penn State Cooperative Extension. So one of our research topics has been looking into the MIND diet. And really the MIND diet is designed to prevent dementia and loss of brain function as you age. So it's a combination of two different diets, the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet. And what it stands for, let me see if I can get this right, Mediterranean Dash Intervention for Neurodegenerative Delay. So it's combining two popular diets that I'm sure you've heard about. Of course, the Mediterranean diet has been in the news for a while now. And then the DASH diet is the dietary approaches to stop hypertension. Combining these two diets has really been shown to benefit brain health. And so it's not going to prevent Alzheimer's disease, but it may slow, maybe if you're going to get the disease, it may slow the progression or even slow the amount of time between diagnosis and the progression of that disease. And there's still so much more research coming out, and things change every day, especially in the nutrition world. But some of the foods, if I can remember off the top of my head, to focus on the MIND diet, basically they encourage consuming 10 different foods. So like green leafy vegetables, berries, nuts, olive oil, whole grains, fish, beans, poultry. And then they also suggest avoiding five specific foods. So that would be butter and margarine, red meat is the other one, fried foods, and then like sweets, so like a lot of sugar, and then also cheese, which is really hard for someone like me who loves cheese. So recommends limiting your cheese consumption. I think it's less than once per week. But you know, what's great about this diet is it's easy to follow because it's literally just eat more of these 10 foods and eat less of these 5 foods. And there's not really a specific dosage for how much you're supposed to be eating them. But the research is, you know, continuing to evolve, and studies have found that trans fats are really clearly associated with a lot of disease, like heart disease and even Alzheimer's disease. So that's why some of those foods that I mentioned to avoid, they're really high in trans fats. So that's part of the reason why they say to avoid those. But yeah, it's a great diet. If you have the chance, do some of your own research on it, and see if you can try to follow it, because there is a lot of promising research coming out.
Wow, that's fabulous. Great information to know. And I'll also point out that on the Alzheimer's website, they put out an annual report every year, and it has quite a bit of detailed information in it. So I would recommend that to the audience as well. I mean, it's pretty lengthy. It's 70 or 80 pages, but each section is clearly labeled, and you can read the entire thing or read the sections that are able to provide you some of the answers to questions that you may have. But it's a very, very good report. Nancy offers not a question, but some information to pass along to the audience. Her dad was a Korean War veteran who lived with her, and she's also a veteran, and he passed away this past January. Nancy, please accept our heartfelt condolences. Her father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2017 by his neurologist, and his doctor determined that he should not be left alone. Nancy says that she worked with his VA primary doctor and was able to receive 9 hours a week of caregiver support. She says this was a big help because she had to hire a caregiver for him while she was at work. So Nancy, thank you for sharing that valuable information. Everything that we can learn about resources is a tremendous benefit. So thank you.
Typically, you need to have a service-connected disability and be in the VA healthcare and or the VBA's benefits administration to have access to those types of benefits. So MOA always recommends that you use the services of a veteran service organization like the Vietnam Vets, like the VFW, like the American Legion, and seek out that advice of whether your veteran or caregiver may be eligible for that type of assistance.
Thank you, Paul. Jerry also shares some important information. He says there is bipartisan legislation called the Equity in Neuroscience and Alzheimer's Clinical Trials. The acronym is ENACT, to increase participation of underrepresented populations in Alzheimer's clinical trials. They're trying to get more African American and Hispanics involved in these trials before they actually come down with the disease. That is fabulous information to know, Jerry. Again, the Alzheimer's annual report talks to this, the impacts of the differences based on race and ethnicity, and the underrepresentation in these clinical trials. So, Jerry, thank you very much for sharing that information. Bruce asked if Prevagen or Nuriva help with memory loss. I've been seeing a lot of commercials in particular about Prevagen. So any thoughts on that, Katie?
Yeah, just remember any over-the-counter supplements aren't regulated, and so they haven't been officially, scientifically proven through research studies, through clinical trials, to be effective. So just remember that when you're thinking about, do these supplements work? I'm sure they're not doing any harm, but just remember that, the research isn't necessarily backing what some of the claims are that they do. So just remember that and talk to your your family doctor about any, supplements that you're taking. I always recommend that for people. They'd be able to give you some more guidance as well.
Thank you, Katie. William asked if there is a progression timeline. And again, William, I would point you to that annual report that the Alzheimer's Association puts out, because it talks in detail about what the progression looks like for the disease. And I found it very, very interesting and surprising in some respects. So that is going to be an easy source of information. Again, their annual report, it is on the Alzheimer's Association's website. Charles asks, is susceptibility to cognitive impairment gender related?
So I was actually doing some research on this, and I found on the Alzheimer's Association's website that women are disproportionately affected by Alzheimer's disease. According to the website, nearly 2/3 of the more than 5 million Americans living with Alzheimer's disease are women, and 2/3 of the more than 15 million Americans providing care and support are also women. So I do think that the disease does place a burden on a lot of women. So yes, according to the Alzheimer's Association, it does affect more women than men. It's really interesting.
Yes, it is very interesting, and it kind of is related to this question that Wayne is asking. He says that many very bright people that they know have gotten Alzheimer's disease. And so he's asking if there's a connection between high intelligence and Alzheimer's. What I will say is, in this annual report that I just referenced, they talk about a surprising link between education and education level and the disease. And I just can't emphasize enough how informative and interesting this report is. But, Katie or anyone else, any comments about the connection between high intelligence and Alzheimer's?
I wish I knew more specifics on that. That's one topic I'm not 100% sure on to give any information, but I want to say that and from all the programs that I've taught on behalf of the Alzheimer's Association, I want to say that in one of the programs they mentioned that highly intelligent people were shown to show clinical signs later than the general population. So I thought that high intelligence was a little protective, but that's something I remember from one of the programs. But research could have come out and changed since then. So yeah, that's something I am not 100% sure on.
As I said, the annual report talks about the connection between education. I found that very, very interesting. Undoubtedly, more research is needed, again, which is why it's so important for folks to participate in clinical trials. Mary says that she is a military widow on a limited income, and she's asking, what are potential resources available to her to get a caregiver without, impacting the life of her child, of her son?
If your husband was a wartime veteran, you may be eligible for aid and attendance. Again, I would reach out to a veteran service organization in your area, and if your son can help you find a VSO, most states, there are only 2 states that don't have county VSO programs, so that's another option. Your son or you can Google your state's Department of Veteran Services to see if there's a county VSO near you. And see if you are eligible to apply for aid and attendance. It's a very strict guideline. There are strict income level associated with that, but they may be able to help you. If your husband was severely disabled from his service, there may be some other programs that you may be eligible for, and that VSO can explain those to you.
William says that his husband has been diagnosed with 3 TIAs. I'm not sure what the acronym TIA is, but another neurologist thinks that the events were temporary brain seizures. So he wonders if there can be confusion in the diagnosis of dementia. And at the risk of being repetitive, again, the annual report talks about how this is very common because there are a range of diseases and conditions that exhibit symptoms similar to that of Alzheimer's disease. It's a well-known issue, which is unfortunate. But again, pursuing treatment and diagnostics with medical professionals is the best way to kind of determine exactly what is going on in either yourself or in your loved one. Let's see. What role does genetics play in the susceptibility of the disease?
So genetics does play a significant role in susceptibility. People ask all the time, is Alzheimer's genetic? So having a parent, a brother or a sister with Alzheimer's will increase your risk, but it doesn't mean that you're going to develop it, right? So there's 2 types of categories of genes that influence whether a person develops a disease. It's risk genes and then the deterministic genes. And researchers have identified that there's hereditary Alzheimer's genes in both of these categories. So, I could go on and on about this, but the answer is yes, it can be genetic, but just because someone in your family did have or has Alzheimer's doesn't mean that you're going to develop it.
Again, the report talks to this as well. I want to emphasize again a point that Katie made during her presentation: the need to get early diagnosis, because there is a lot that can be done if you are aware of what's going on. So we've been equipped with a lot of great information so that we know we don't have to necessarily be afraid. It's much more empowering to know what's going on. So if you think there might be an issue, then certainly consult with your medical professional. I am afraid that that's all the time that we have for today. I want to express our deep appreciation to our speakers, Katie Greenewald, Les Berger, Daryl Foss, and Paul Frost. You have just provided a wealth of information and perspective, and we are all now much smarter thanks to the insights and perspectives that you've provided to us here this afternoon. To the audience, thank you for taking this important step of joining us here today. I truly hope you got the information that you needed, if not directly via the webinar, then through the resources that have been provided. A few reminders. Don't forget, you will receive an email with a link to this recording for this presentation so that you can watch it again. The email will also come with a very brief survey. Please take a couple of minutes to fill that out so that we can get an idea of what other topics you would like to see us present on. Make sure you download or access the resources that were in the resource window on your screen. But you can find all of those resources and much more on the Alzheimer's Association website. If you'd like to know more about the Military Officers Association of America, please visit our website as well. If you did not get an opportunity to get your question answered, we had a lot of folks participating today, so there were a lot of questions. Please utilize the Alzheimer's Association's 24/7 helpline. It's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it can accommodate 200 different languages. So clearly, the Alzheimer's Association is serious in their commitment to supporting you and providing you resources. Again, thank you all for joining us here today, and we hope that you have a wonderful week.